Meja, imagine nimegetile loan ya Timiza.
What? Niaje? Uko na bakery biashara plan. Tuko na Timiza loan limit.
Okay? And by the way, the team that did this work, I really must take this opportunity to appreciate all of you. Okay? Kanya, now you at least can settle. You did well. Professor Nguru, I think, is somewhere. Professor Somes, some of them I think may have arrived. Oh yeah, you are still there. I couldn't see you. How is Eldoret, by the way? Very good. He's a very distinguished engineer from the University of Eldoret. Also used to be the CEO of the Commission for University Education. And way back, if I remember, way back 1999, you were secretary to the commission that was the Koech Commission, is it? That was examining education within Kenya. By the way, there have been a lot of commissions that have been done doing this. Let me just not talk too much, but let me indicate that there are some challenges that we noticed. And Your Excellency, I think it's important to share this with you. Issue of access is extremely necessary. Issue of transitioning of learners from early childhood to primary to secondary to the university. To me, if we want to be a country that will be a major developed country, and we can do that by the end of 5 years that we are approaching, because our HDI can raise very fast if we focus on education. And therefore, to me, education
wafugaji nayo na hiyo itakuweko.
100% transitioning is extremely important to ensure that every young person, whether from marginalized communities or from wherever, have access to quality education. I think is extremely important. The second thing, or from wherever, have access to quality education, I think is extremely important. The second thing is, as people are transitioning, there are obviously challenges. And one of the challenges that, and we discussed in the team, was the question of, we normally allow transitioning to take place depending on performance in examinations. And therefore, sometimes those who don't perform very well have a challenge. We think that we must refocus and say, even if somebody is transiting from secondary school to university, is it necessary that they must have a cutoff point, Professor Some, of a particular grade? Is indeed necessary for us to rethink of alternative criteria, alternative competencies, qualifications, skills that are needed, but they are very essential. I should now these are just general comments. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank all of you for being present here for this engagement. It's extremely important for this country and for all of us as key stakeholders in the education sector. We are now going to have detailed comments and presentations about the Charter from selected professionals. So please forget about what I may have said and listen carefully and attentively to the professionals that are going to handle issues of basic education, university education, TVET, and so on. So may I now stop there and request my colleague to... Yeah, we are all learning. We are here doing education, so it's a learning process. So I have the distinguished honor, I have been advised that before anybody else stands here, the distinguished His Excellency, Your Excellency, the Deputy President should come and open the discussion, and then we can proceed from there. Please welcome Dr. William Samoei Ruto.
No, it's okay, please, you don't have to stand. Thank you very much, Mwalimu, Professor Munavu, and I want to say that I was a student in Chiromo, where Professor Munavu was our principal of that college. And he can confirm that I was a student. I am equally privileged to stand before my PhD supervisor, Professor Nkanya, who is here. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me take this opportunity on behalf of the Kenya Kwanza fraternity to welcome everybody to this discussion. I want to say right from the onset that this is going to be probably the most important discussion going into the future. It's going to be the most important discussion for two reasons. Reason number one is because the greatest enabler of the bottom-up model is education. The second reason why this is probably going to be the most important discussion is because the single most important resource we have as a nation is our human capital. And education is responsible for shaping and sharpening our human capital. In fact, today, the biggest contributor to our GDP in terms of resources that we raise as government is resources that come from our human capital. In fact, the highest foreign exchange earner today in Kenya is our human capital in the diaspora. Diaspora remittance, which is basically our human capital remittance from diaspora, has exceeded coffee, tea, horticulture in terms of the amount of money we raise. And therefore, education, the single most important enabler of our human capital, is the discussion we are having in this auditorium. And that is why it is probably the most important discussion. The third reason why it is the most important discussion is because we have agreed that as a nation, the single most important discussion we are going to have in this election is the economy. And as I have said, the biggest contributor to our economy is our human capital. And the most important enabler of our human capital is education. That is why we isolated education to have a standalone conversation, a standalone symposium because it is one of the most important sectors that we must shape to the next level. I say so also authoritatively as a former Minister for Higher Education. I know how working on education can change the destiny of a nation. I know, for example, that reorienting and re-engineering our education has enabled 480,000 students today to be in our Tibet institutions, as opposed to about 89,000 in 2013. And that has created a human capital that is more focused, with skills, with competencies, that will help us achieve the targets of Vision 2030 and all the other targets we've set out for ourselves as a nation to achieve. My good teacher, Professor Munavu, has said that this discussion we're going to have here is going to be largely about 3 or 4 factors. One is access. How do we improve access? How do we achieve universal access? Number 2, how do we make sure that our education is relevant so that we can use it to tackle the challenges of our time? The shift to Tibet was part of that endeavor to make our education relevant to what we need, the kind of human capital we need to be able to achieve what we are looking for. All our other endeavors as a nation in food security, in health, and in all the other spheres in our economy, the kind of human capital we develop will make it that much more easy to achieve those targets. The third issue is affordability. How affordable is our education? How do we make it that much more affordable? How do we make it that much more affordable so that the majority, as we discuss free primary, free secondary, our tertiary institutions, TVETs, and all the other tertiary institutions, all the way to university, how do we make it? How do we fund it? How do we make sure it's affordable for the majority of the citizens of our country? So these are the issues that we want to have a discussion around. Access, relevance, affordability. These are issues we want to have a conversation about so that we can build a human capital that is going to give us the edge, not only to achieve what we have set out to achieve as a nation, but to make sure that that education is internationally competitive and we can have access to opportunities beyond the boundaries of our nation. So I thought it is important for us to calibrate the kind of discussion we are going to have. And I want to thank the stakeholders that have participated in many meetings that have gone into the meeting we are having here today. As a policy in Kenya Kwanza, we decided that we are not going to write a manifesto in some hotel room or in some conference somewhere. We are going to have a robust engagement. We have collected a lot of views from stakeholders in the many economic fora we have had around the country. We've had views from teachers, from managers of schools, from parents, from students, on what they think about HELP, Higher Education Loans Board, on what they think about the curriculum we're running, on what they think about CBC. We've collected a lot of information, and that information has been processed through the various education-specific sector meetings that have gone into the journey towards us arriving at this final symposium. So, to all of you who have contributed your ideas, you have made suggestions, you have given us ideas, and to thank our technical teams, members, who have committed a lot of time in putting this together voluntarily. Members of WASU, members of KUPET, members of NAT, members of private schools, and many other stakeholders, including our church institutions who are partners in running our education institutions. We have come here finally to have this final conversation, and as Kenya Kwanza, we will be happy to sign a charter with the education sector on agreed parameters on what needs to be done on teachers' shortage, what needs to be done on capitation, what needs to be done on Higher Education Loans Board provision, and on all the other areas that we want to engage in as a way of arriving at education being the driver for our economic model, and making sure that bottom-up is enabled by the kind of education that we have. I forgot to mention one last thing, is quality. Accessible, affordable, relevant, and the right quality of education. That's really at the bottom of what we need to discuss, so that we don't get half-baked people at the end of our education chain. We get people with the correct quality education. We are going to have a conversation about competence-based education. I want to say from the onset that the graduation that has taken place from knowledge and exam-based education to now knowledge, competence, skills-based, and value-based education is the right trajectory. So it's very important for us to understand that as Kenya Kwanza, we support the progression from what we had as knowledge and exam-based education only to the new format of knowledge, skills, and competence, as well as value-based education. The conversation we want to have is, we are now 5 years into CBC. UNESCO guidelines gives us the latitude that every 5 years you have to review your education curriculum. And this is the moment. We've had concerns from parents, we've had concerns from teachers, we've concerns from various stakeholders. As Kenya Kwanza, we want to have a robust conversation with the public, with all the stakeholders, so that we can have an education system that where everybody is comfortable, and it leads us to quality, it leads us to relevance, it's also affordable, and it's of good quality. That's really where we want to go. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am truly happy to participate in this conversation. I think it is the most important conversation, as I have said earlier, and this discussion is now open. I know we have, I cannot claim to be a professional. I know there are so many other professionals who can speak to this, but I can also confirm that I have gone to school. So I have an idea of what it should be. So, and I want to thank my teachers who are here and all the other, I also have people I went with to school, and many other people. I know there is now huge controversy about degrees and this kind of thing, and I think sorting out our education the way we are doing it will actually remove some of the gray areas that have occasioned the kind of challenges we have today of us not knowing who was in school, who was not. And it will also help us to eliminate cases of people saying they went to school, they have no known classmates, they have no known lecturers, and nobody knows what courses they did. So I think it will help us sort out the whole of that, mess. So welcome, good people, to this very important conversation, and I think we can now take it up from there. Asanteni sana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Now, I will call the first speaker.
Thank you very much, Master of Ceremonies, Your Excellency, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, Your Excellencies, party leaders who are here, the Chair of the Education Committee, colleague educationalists, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It gives me great pleasure to be here today to address this forum. And before I say anything, Your Excellency, allow me just to recognize some of my colleagues who have given me a mandate to chair the Kenya Secondary School Heads Association, and also other sister associations that we collaborate with very much on matters education. With me, I have representatives from KEPSHA, and I know I have the former chairman here of KEPSHA, Mr. Gademia, his team, kindly wave. We also have KEPSHA officials, our secretary, national secretary, Mr. Kuria, is here. I have the chairman of KEWOTA, Kenya Women Teachers Association, is here. I have SHAC. SHAC is the Special Schools Heads Association. The former treasurer is here. And apart from that, we also have our unionists here, KUPPET and NAT represented. And we have teachers from all over the country. My colleague teachers, please just stand. I know you are there. Just stand and, yeah. So these are the people, Your Excellency, that have allowed me to participate on their behalf on matters education. As I stand here this morning, I would like to share with you and the forum on matters of basic education. Your Excellency, you've articulated it very well, and even the person who, Daktari, who gave us the preamble, really did indicate that education is the key driver. If we want to progress as a country, if we want our economy to be good, then an educated citizen is key. A good education system is very important. And for us to be able to ensure that our students and our citizens are well educated, we must invest a lot in the training. We must invest a lot in quality training of the key driver, the teachers. The people seated behind you, sir, majority are teachers, and they agree with me that the quality of training, how they are empowered, and how they are employed becomes very key. As Kenya Kwanza takes over government, it will be important to first think of the gap in the teaching. At the moment, as principals and head teachers of various institutions, we are lacking the number of teachers that are required. I know there are very many out there that are waiting to be employed, but it would be important to first address the very needy, the gap that is there. When we last checked, our shortfall is about 118,000 teachers. This would be very important that immediately they are employed to be able to take care of the 100% transition, to be able to take care as we prepare for junior secondary students that are coming to us, and then eventually ensure that those teachers that are out there waiting to be employed are employed and employed very quickly. Ladies and gentlemen, as we look at the employment of teachers, a good teacher and a teacher that is going to deliver the curriculum the way it is must be happy, must be healthy. It would be important to look at how do we enumerate them. How is their medical cover? Is it able to take care when they fall sick? At the moment, there are challenges because at times when they go for treatment, you are told that this insurance cannot manage 1, 2, 3. So it would be important to look at the health status of our teachers. It is also important to look at the issues to do with their continuous training. A bone of contention that we have today, which I want to present to you to think about it, is the issues of the continuous training through the TPD program. That is now being said that the teachers will have to finance for themselves. That is a bone of contention. I would like to recommend that as we prepare and continuously train them, let this continuous training be borne by the government. so that when the government feels that I need to be retooled, they need to pay and ensure that I'm ready to continue working. The issues to do with safety. We are aware that across the country, some of the areas are now facing a shortfall because of the insecurity in the area. It will be important that the safety of both the learner and the students, the learner and the teachers are addressed, so that the teacher feels comfortable, the teacher knows that my responsibility is at this level and that there is somebody else to ensure that I'm safe. It is the responsibility of government to ensure that the security of every citizen is key. The issue of remuneration. I'll address issues to do with the teachers, then move to other areas. The issues of remuneration are very important. A well-resourced, a well-tooled teacher, and finally a well-paid teacher will deliver the curriculum to the level that the government would like to look at it. Our proposal, sir, is that immediately you take over, can you look at allow the stakeholders to further discuss on the CBA? Because the CBA that has been there, the teachers out there call it the maternity CBA. Yes, it is true, when our partners deliver, we also must be available to support them, to ensure that they are strong enough, then we continue with work. But in addition to that, the teacher will always want to see how much has been increased on my pay. So I want to request that immediately, propose that immediately you take over government, let Teacher Service Commission, our unions, take over and discuss the CBA afresh. And I think this cuts across the entire sector of education, from basic education up to tertiary education. I'm sure as my friends come to share, this will be repeated several times. The issues of facilities in our institutions. When I talk of facilities, I'm not only looking at infrastructure, the classroom alone. That is key. But one big issue that we must look at, and as we look at the sciences, how are we developing the infrastructure in terms of laboratories, the infrastructure in terms of libraries for research, the infrastructure in terms of technology. Because as we move forward, technology, we need to leverage on technology. And the biggest challenge that we have in these areas, Your Excellency, is the internet connectivity. When Corona hit us, we all closed schools and we closed learning. Eventually, we realized that learning must continue, and we started sending lessons to students via phones. So the school was now in the phone. But when they come to school, we tell them don't come with the phones. So it will be important for us to leverage on technology, so that should we face another shock in the education sector, we do not close schools and close learning. Schools can be closed, but learning should be able to continue. It is our proposal that issues on internet connectivity be looked into, so that the tariff or the charges that go with internet connectivity are brought down for purposes of teaching and learning. 100% transition policy by government today is good. This ensures that all our children go to school. But what challenges have we faced with a 100% policy? The biggest challenge has been overstretched facilities on a certain cadre of schools that ends up with so many students because they believe in that cadre of schools there will be quality education. But if you look at data, 70% of our schools in the nation are day schools. And consequently, the largest number of students in our country are found in day schools. The challenge has been that these day schools have not been well facilitated in terms of infrastructure, in terms of staffing, and therefore they end up not having the students that they need. Students now run away to the schools that they feel, or parents, the schools that they feel are well resourced. It is our recommendation that we should invest more in our day schools, equip them well, resource them, and then staff them so that students and parents can have confidence to take their children to the primary schools, the day schools that are closer to them. Because we are saying, as we move these children to junior secondary, and I happen to have been a member of the task force, one of the recommendations we were saying that junior secondary should be primarily day school. But now, with the crave which the Kenyans have for boarding schools, it means that we may not achieve that unless we invest more in our day schools. So for us to achieve it, our recommendations, let us invest more in our day schools. Your Excellency, the government policy on capitation is good because it ensures that every child has a percentage of money that ensures this child is in school. And as I said, in day schools, it would be almost completely free, apart from boarding schools where the parents have to pay for boarding services. So this 100% policy and the number of students expected to be in those institutions, we still have disparities. And that is what we need to seriously look into to ensure that the policy and capitation is right. And how are we going to do this? We propose, Your Excellency, that when it comes to issues of utilities, and here I'm looking at electricity, water, as I've already mentioned, internet connectivity, and many other utilities that the schools use. Schools are charged for use of electricity at a market price. So you find that a school that is large enough are paying up to about 800,000 per month on electricity. This is a very big chunk. So that even if government is giving capitation, the same government through Kenya Power is receiving this money. And therefore, the schools are left to be challenged. You look at water, the same. You look at sewerage services, we pay very heavily. Our proposal is that could we look at special tariffs for learning institutions? And I'm saying learning institutions because I believe from ECD up to our universities will require this special kind of arrangement. How will it benefit us? One, you may not need to now increase capitation because they are going to be paying less for service provided by institutions of government, Kenya Power, Kenya Water, and all that. When we pay low, then it means the schools, through the capitation government has been given, will be able to have enough money to do other things. And for boarding schools, it will be important to look at how do we cushion these schools with the fluctuating market prices of food items. The grains, maize and beans, sugar. It would be important now, maybe as a policy, that we look at how KCPB and other institutions can come in to sell this commodity to schools at a highly subsidized price. With the large populations that we have, we will buy more. The farmer will have an opportunity to supply to KCPB because there is a ready market in our schools. You will have introduced free feeding programs from ECD and some areas in the ASAL areas, and I believe it will trickle down all the way up to the farmer who is growing this. We want to appreciate, sir, the partners who have come in to support government in ensuring that children go to school through bursaries. I have in mind Equity, KCB, Jomo Kenyatta, very many other organizations, CDFs, individual people coming in to support needy children. As principals, we have noticed that one student can end up benefiting from multiple sponsors. CDF has given these students something. A church organization has given the students something. Maybe the parent was following up with the Equity, and the Equity also sends. So you find this one child benefiting at the expense of a very needy child who has not been reached. So that at the end of maybe a period of 4 years or so, you find a parent coming to tell you that my son has excess fees. And true, the fees is now excess. The next question he says that because it was money for my child and he has now cleared, can you refund? The question has been, whom do I refund? Do I refund the organizations that were sponsoring, or do I refund the parent? And that is why it is important for us to find a way of having a central control system that is robust, that when a Elimu scholar from government gives Indimuli the student the scholarship, that data is available somewhere. If Honorable Sosion wants to give Indimuli a scholarship, can query the data, and the data will tell him Indimuli is being sponsored, so you don't need to add any more sponsors. Equity is sponsoring student X. KCB does not need to sponsor the same, because there is somewhere central where this information can be found. That is very important. And I'm sure through that, we will be able to reach very many needy Kenyan children who are sometimes left out because we were not able to get some of this data on time. And also, as we give out our capitation, we are cognizant of the fact that not all our schools are well populated. I am in a school that is privileged to have 2,145 students. If you give me 1,000 per child, I'll be able to have 2 million. But there are others which have only 100 students. When you give them 1,000 per child, this school will only get 100,000. But the two schools are supposed to offer the same services. The two schools are supposed to source from the same market teaching and learning materials. But government has given capitation of 1,000 across board. We feel we must look at something that we can model almost to the equalization fund of county governments, so that schools that have very low population, can you think of a way in which they can be supported with an additional fund to be able to support them grow? That one is something we can think about as a nation and find a way forward. As I've already said, that the introduction of special tariffs. It is also important to note that as we integrate our children, both those with special needs with the normal ones, we need to think more about children with special needs. I think as a nation, and this I must confess, we've not thought much about children with special needs. So we need to engage more with their